To start building the Todoist app, we're going to first clone the starting project. So head over to the course resources link and click on the Todoist starter project. That should take you to our GitHub repo, and then click on clone or download and copy the URL. Now head back into Xcode and click on clone an existing project, or go via source control and click clone. Now let's paste in that URL, click clone. And now go ahead and save it anywhere you like. So I'm going to put it on my desktop for now. Now, once that's done, you should end up with a pretty much blank project. You won't find much code in the view controller, and main.storyboard also has a blank screen. So effectively, this is just a blank project, but it's been set up to be compatible with iOS 12 and 13. The first thing you have to do is head over to the Todoist project and change the bundle identifier to something unique. For example, just change that London Appery to your own name. Now we can start by designing our app in the main.storyboard. And I'm going to drag on a table view controller. Now this is a normal UI view controller, which we've been working with thus far. But now I'm going to use a table view controller. And once I drag it on, you can see that there's some important differences. The table view controller comes with a table view linked up, as well as prototype cells, and all of the delegates and data source is already linked up and ready to go. So for the keen-eyed amongst you, you'll realize that this is a little bit different from how we implemented a table view in Flash Chat. And this is on purpose so that I can show you there's actually many ways to skin a cat, or in more pet-friendly lingo, there's many ways of doing the same thing. But I'm going to delete this view controller. Now, before you delete it, if you remember, there's this little arrow here, which points to the initial view controller. So that's the view controller that is going to show up on screen once the app has first loaded up. Now, what we want to do is we want to use this arrow and move it to our table view controller. This is now going to be our initial view controller because we are going to delete this view controller. Now, if you forget this step and you accidentally got rid of this view controller with the arrow along with it, then it's not a problem. You can simply select the table view controller, go to the attribute inspector, and just click this part where it says is initial view controller, and you see that arrow come back. So both ways do the same thing, basically show this view controller as the first screen when the app loads up. Now you'll notice that this view controller is not linked with the viewcontroller.swift file here. And that was in fact linked to that view controller that we just deleted. So in order to create a bond between this viewcontroller.swift file and our main.storyboard, the first thing we have to do is to go into the view controller and change its superclass, or the class which inherits from, and change it from UIViewController to UITableViewController. Not UITableView, but a UITableView controller. Hit enter. And now I'm also going to change the name of this view controller to something else so that it's a little bit more clear. So I'm going to change the name of this to to-do list view controller. Now it might give you this little warning here, this little pop-up saying that to-do list view controller could not be saved. The file has been changed by another application. And all you have to do is just click save anyways, and it will get rid of that little pop-up. Now, because we've changed the file name of this view controller, it's also a good idea to change it here as well. So we're going to change it to to-do list view controller and make sure that it's capitalized because it's the name of our class. So now if we hit save and make that not gray, then we can go back to the main storyboard, select the table view controller and go into its identity inspector and specify the custom class. You can see that at the moment it doesn't have a class associated with it because we haven't specified one. So if you click here, and you can either click the down button or you can start typing, but basically the one we want to link it with is the to-do list view controller. Now, just before I add that, I want to show you how you can tell that it's not linked up. When you select this view controller on the left and you've got automatic selected, it should show you the Swift file that's linked to this view controller in the main.storyboard. Now, in our case, it's not because this view controller is not yet linked with any Swift file. So let's go ahead and do what we planned on doing, which is select to-do list view controller and hit enter. And now you can see automatically to show the corresponding Swift code file with this view controller. So now this is how we can tell that it's all linked up. Now we've got one warning here, which is telling us that prototype cells must have reuse identifiers so that we can identify them in our code file. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's select that cell and go to the attributes, and you can see it's got a reuse identifier here, which is blank, and we're going to call it to do item cell and hit enter. And now that warning will go away. And I'm going to hit Command S to save the main.storyboard as well. So while we're here at the main.storyboard, I'm going to design it a little bit and modify its UI a little bit more. Now, the first thing I want to do is I don't really want an app that's just a table view. I want my app to have a nav bar at the top. And to do that, I have to select the view controller and go to Editor and Embed In. And I'm going to select Navigation Controller. So Navigation Controller comes with the top bar, and the tab bar comes with the bottom bar. So this is the one that we want in this case. So let's arrange it nicely, and you can see now our table view controller and everything else subsequently will inherit this top bar. Now the top bar doesn't yet say anything because it doesn't have a title, so let's give it one. So you can either select it here or you can select it in the document outline over here. So the title is going to be To Dewey, and you can see it shows up over here. So we can set the background color of the navigation bar by selecting it in the document outline and heading over to bar tint, and we can select a nice color, maybe a nice blue. And the next thing I want to do is change the text color. So I'm going to change it from black to white. So that's looking pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with the design. Now the next thing I want to do is to set up the code file. So let's go over to to-do list viewcontroller.swift, and we've already inherited UITableViewController. So whereas before in FlashChat, we kept the view controller as a subclass of UIViewController, in which case we needed to add the whole self.tableview.delegate, and we need to link up those IB outlets. By simply inheriting a UITableViewController and adding a table view controller to the storyboard instead of a normal view controller, all of that is automated behind the scenes by Xcode, and we don't need to link up any IB outlets. We don't have to set ourselves as the delegate or data source. It's all taken care of by Xcode. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this did receive memory warning to declutter our code a little bit. So I'm going to create a brand new item array. And in this array, I'm going to create some hard-coded items to be listed in our to-do list on startup. So obviously you can put any to-do list items you want here, but I'm going to go with the Stranger Things theme, and I'm going to list some to-dos. So I've got 3 strings in my item array, and they are going to be the text for cell 1, cell 2, and cell 3 in my table view. So now at this stage, I want to set you the challenge of creating the table view data source methods. So if you remember, there are 2 methods that we created in FlashChat, which allowed us to specify what the cells should display and also how many rows we wanted in our table view. So you can pause the video and complete the challenge, and if you've done it right, once you run your app, you should be able to see these 3 items listed in 3 cells on your table view. So go ahead and do that. All right, so how did that go? So the first data source method that we're going to add is the number of rows. So if we just start writing table view, then you can see that we've got this whole big selection of different things that we might want to include. And the one that I want is number of rows in section. So I'm going to go ahead and click enter, and it's expecting an output in a return statement that will be the number of rows. So I'm going to simply return the item array dot count. And that is going to create 3 cells for me in my table view. Now the next data source method I want is another one beginning with table view, but this is going to be self a row at index path. And I think it's this one. Ask the data source for a cell to insert in a particular location of the table view. So that sounds pretty much like it, and it's table view self a row at index path. Okay, so perfect. Now here, firstly delete the placeholder. Next, we are going to create a cell that is going to be a reusable cell. So we're going to use table view. And you can see that there's 2 table views that come up that looks pretty much identical to each other. But the only difference is this little symbol on the left here. Now, if you want to know what all of these symbols mean, I'm going to include a link in the resources for this lesson to a list for the geeky ones out there who want to see what each and every symbol mean. And this is called code sense. And it's a whole bunch of symbols that help you make sense of what it is that AutoSuggest is recommending. So this is a really good reference if you want to understand that a little bit more. So on the top, we've got what's called a local variable. And at the bottom, we've got the global variable. So where do these 2 come from? Now, this global variable is what we get by subclassing this UITableViewController. It's the same as if we created an IB outlet from the table view on the main storyboard and called it table view here. It's just the default name that's given to that table view outlet. Now the local variable here comes from this method as one of the parameters. Now in this case, it doesn't actually matter which one you choose because they're both going to refer to the same thing. And once you click enter and you hit dot, then you're going to be able to tap into DQ reusable cell with identifier for index path, which is the method that we want. So the identifier is of course the identifier which we gave to our prototype cell, which was to do item cell, and we can paste that in here. And the index path is going to be the current index path that the table view is looking to populate. So once we've got our cell DQ'd, the next thing to do is we're going to set the text label, right? This is the label that's in every single cell. And we're going to set its text property. And we're going to set it to equal the items in our item array. And at the index path that we're currently populating, dot row. So the current row of the current index path. And finally, we're going to return our cell as this method expects an output. And that cell that's been created using our reuse prototype cell and that has been populated with text for the current row is now returned to the table view and displayed as a row. So let's go ahead and hit run and see what it looks like. All right, so you can see that we've now got 3 hard-coded items that's populated our table view, and you can drag up and down, but there's not really much else to see. So if you managed to get this far all by yourself, then that's great. If you didn't and anything seemed confusing, then make sure that you have a look back at the parts where we coded up the table view and where we did the animated explanations of table views in the Flash Chat module. because table views is part of the bread and butter of any iOS developer. So it's really, really important that you know how to get it right. Now, this table view that we've created in this case is a lot simpler than the one that we had in FlashChat, because FlashChat was all about table views, whereas it's only going to be a very little part of this app. So we're using as much help as we can get from Xcode and using a lot of the template code that they can provide for us. By subclassing this to-do list view controller as a UITableViewController, we've gotten a lot of stuff for free. We didn't need to create our IB outlet. We already have access to this thing called TableView. And we also didn't need to say TableView.delegate equals self or TableView.dataSource equals self. And that's all because of this one single powerful subclassing that we've done here. So this is a good time to review table views if you're at all confused. Otherwise, we're going to continue on to the next lesson, and we are going to start making our app work as a to-do list app. So I want to be able to click on these cells and to be able to know which cell I clicked on. So I'll see you in the next lesson.